At first, I was like, is that a plant behind him? Dude, come November, it's going to be dragging.
Well hung. Yeah, I see like 2 tracks, and then there's like a line back with it.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, that's a mature deer if I've ever seen one. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Heck yeah, man. Dude, we put a lot of food in the ground every year, seemingly more and more, and we have a ton of fun with it during the off season. There's some struggles that come with it too, though, right? Obviously, the back of my truck is evidence, right now. It's a couple weeks after I jackknifed, a 4,800-pound material spreader, as I was coming down, and it was too much weight for my truck there. But, all those struggles aside, Deer Grow really has been a staple for our food plotting process for several years now. Yes, we like to put lime and fertilizer on the plots, if we can, but there are some that it's just we're not able to get to them, or it's not feasible for us to get out of state with that stuff. And so Deer Grow is kind of the quick and easy, but still super effective option for us to be able to get the most out of those food plots that we can every year.
Yeah, and we're guilty of overanalyzing things just like everyone else, but that's the best part about Deer Grow is that it's going to create healthier soils, which in turn makes better food plots. And the fact is we can simply spray plot start or plot till when we put the seed in the ground, and then when that plant starts to grow, we hit it with boost. And we know that we walk away, when we come back, it's going to be a great looking food plot. For anybody that's looking to try Deer Grow, if you use the code HUNTR15, that's HUNTR15 at checkout for deergrow.com, you're going to save 15% on any of your Deer Grow products. It's a great way to get started on this and just see what the results are for yourself.
Better food plots, bigger deer.
And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 182, as Nick continues to keep us in line.
Mm-hmm. Hey, thank you guys for being here, wherever you're listening from, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. We appreciate you being here. Mm-hmm. Leave us a like, follow, or subscribe to the channel, whatever's appropriate there. And if you guys have reached out to us on Instagram DMs or the website, we appreciate you doing so. We try to get back to those, but I know there's a few sitting in the inbox, so be patient with us. And here we go.
Speaking of messages, I promised somebody on Instagram or YouTube, I can't remember. Anyways, that we would talk about this. We've mentioned a few times here the South Carolina hour hunting before, hour hunting after sunset thing.
Yeah.
And I think it was Joe Miles who said, we were saying something. So what, you cannot hunt with a light during those times. It's specifically around like if it's a very clear day and like full moon type, that you have a device like your scope that can gather enough light to make that shot, you're able to make that shot. But you cannot use an artificial light to create the shot. So
interesting.
Kudos to, I can't remember now, so I apologize. But I did it.
So
I told you I'd do it, I did it.
Within those hours, then it's some sort of twilight. Like there's in theory enough natural light.
Well, think about like a full moon. Like there's plenty of times like it gets dark, or in the morning it's full moon. Like you can see deer moving through a field.
Sure.
And so if you had enough light being captured from like a scope, I think in particular, to make that shot, it would be legal.
Interesting. I don't know if that's any better.
Probably not. But no.
I mean, it's
artificial.
No artificial light, but I mean, it's not any like safer.
Well, I mean, if I think about it,
twilight.
Trying to go back to that, it's like, I'm sure there are like, I mean, we obviously, the big thing is I know you look at least for me, I look at the last minutes of the legal hunting hours more than I look at the first minutes of the legal hunting hours. Does that make sense? Like if I'm sitting in a tree stand bow hunting, right? Like,
well, yeah, in the afternoon it gets better as time goes on, is what you're saying.
Right. In the morning, you're in the heat of it, but you've got to, you need to have enough light to make the shot anyway. So like, I feel like most of the time by when that happens, it's already legal shooting hours. On the flip side, legal shooting hours in the afternoon, I think, end sometimes prior to like you still being able to make shots with that half hour thing.
Sure.
Right. So like legal shooting hours end at 4:58 p.m. and it's 5:02 and it's like, man, if a buck came through, I could kill him right now.
I think most people think they can shoot later than they can, including myself at one time. It's like you are just looking with your eyes, and if
you do the old pin up, pin down, pin up, pin down on
and it's your eyes have adapted as it's gotten darker and darker, and you're like, I can see that thing there, and I think I could shoot. I can kind of see my pin here. That's good. But if it's actually happening, you come to full draw, because I've been there several times,
through a peep sight.
To look through a peep, which is limiting light, and then to align that on, it's just,
it's darker.
It's darker than you think.
Yeah. So anyways, just want to make clarity.
I mean, I know guys that have in Kansas,
We
right?
know,
They're
yeah.
like, I could see his body in the outline of the corn pile, right? So you had to like.
I was already in the truck driving. Get that?
Yeah, I was like, he's like, I just shot. And I'm like, what? What? What do you mean?
Yeah, that doesn't work. So, well, and especially as you think about, you know, I can't remember. I think our HHAs have it, but they have the light opportunity to put on your.
Which I don't think helps from an.
I think box blind or
That's
ground blind.
that's where you have to have it, frankly, because it gets dark in there way earlier than you need to be done shooting. But out in the field, it's deceiving. Like it just in a tree stand, or if you're not enclosed in something, it does make the pin brighter, but that's not the problem. Now all you just see is pin.
You can't see the background of the actual.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to make that clear so that way nobody in South Carolina goes out, uses a spotlight before.
Yeah, we'll read the rules, right? And we don't even that we don't know. We're
Yeah.
just Joe told us that initially, and I forget exactly what he said, but
Yeah.
whatever.
So clarity on that. I think Joe was. Yeah, I think we were good on it. So, anyways, it is May 9th. May 9th. Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're seeing some velvet growing. We've immediately dismissed like turkey season's done.
It's over.
It's over.
I didn't
Even
even
though
go.
we just started in Pennsylvania on Saturday, it's like it's over.
I didn't even go. I might. No, I probably won't go.
Saw like my first like good velvet with brows, and I'm like, I'm in.
It does slip away quickly. Like it feels like pretty much summer already.
Yeah,
Or it has.
This is well, we've had like some really warm weather. We're about to get like some shitty weather here.
Yeah. And rain.
Yeah, but yeah, this is kind of that time frame. I mean, you know, a bit of scramble mode, especially if you're doing like beans or corn.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit not behind, but like I gotta get sprayed here.
It's been the weather. You
I know.
It's like, well, I'll do it next week, and then all of a sudden, boom, 7 days a row and
I went
rain.
out. I told you I went out a couple days ago, and I was gonna spray, and then the weather it turned, and so I ended up just flagging out where we're gonna do switch and stuff like that. So like tomorrow, I might get Dad out there.
Yeah.
Sunday is Mother's Day, but man, it looks, you know.
Mom, you want to ride the tractor?
The conditions are right, so maybe I can pull a double whammy, double trip there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's, you know, so that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, it's still spring. Like we went up and the boys caught some giant crappie.
I saw that.
We're a little behind. We usually are about like last week of April we start getting on them, but it's just been shitty weather and busy. And so I was like, let's just go up for an hour. And went right to our spot. Weren't catching anything. In fact, there were other people there.
Where do you guys go? You go to like a lake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You don't have to tell me where, but a lake.
A lake.
What do you fish for?
I'm not going to spot burn.
No. Well, I'm not fishing for guppies, but how do you fish for them? Live bait?
Usually, but like it was going to rain, so I was like, well, we'll just go up. So I use like a little jig with like a crappie nugget, like a little power bait crappie nugget on it. And then under,
I like that, huh?
Yep, under like a floater bobber. And
just
then
like we're doing out of brackets?
Yep, and just jig, and take it down.
Nice.
So we were in our spot that we usually catch them at. There were other people there too, which I don't think they were fishing for like just anything. And I was surprised, like we like 0 bites, like we weren't catching anything. And I'm like, what the hell?
You check your moon guide.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, tides were off. And so we went to this other spot where it looks good, but like we maybe catch one. Like we never catch anything. And like right out of the gate, Carter caught 2 really big ones, and Harlan caught like a freaking
some monster.
Mammoth,
I saw the pictures you posted.
Mammoth, like giant.
Yeah.
You throw them all back?
We did. Usually I'll keep a handful or so and cook them, but I was like, we had too much shit going on, so we just threw them back. So I've got a little John boat I think I'm gonna try to take up there soon, and I can cover a lot more because we're just fishing from the banks. So there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
Especially on a lake. But so we got that. And
Dude, I have a quick question, and I'll cut this out of the podcast if it's illegal.
I don't think so.
It's not a legal ask question.
My uncle, he enjoys night fishing, which I assume is fine.
Yep,
right?
it is legal.
And he will go out on my grandparents' pontoon, and he'll put like this big ass light bar.
Oh yeah,
and
it brings all the bait fish in.
Yeah, and it's the coolest thing to see. It's like
they do like a tornado around it.
It's like the entire ecosystem in the water. It starts with these little mackerel, and then these.
Yeah.
It just like schools and schools, and we were slaying crappie like last summer doing that.
Yeah, that's what most guys will do at night especially as you get into the summer months when it gets hotter.
Yeah.
Because those fish right now, all those fish, the reason we caught them is like it's spawning season.
Okay.
At least where we're at. In some places it's coming out. But so all the fish push up close to shore in the brush piles and stuff like that.
Nice.
As the water gets warmer, they'll go back into the deeper waters and channels into the structure. But at night, if you bring that up and you bring the bait fish up, they'll start to work their way back up to the surface because the water temps get cooler.
Okay.
So they just don't do that in the middle of the day because it's 80 degrees on the surface. But
is that the thought process with bow fishing as well? Like those lights? Is that why they are jumping at that point?
No, I think most of the bowfish stuff is purely visibility. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I met a dude at the gym that he's like, he recognized me and we started chatting. I guess he runs like a little fishing, bow fishing
yeah, you told me about that.
operation out of like the
Mon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool.
I feel like I can't see shit in the Mon.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I've never been bow fishing.
But it's dirty as hell.
I've heard it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, he offered to take us. So I was just like,
It's fishing season. It's planting season. Yeah, all the above.
Oh yeah. Well, dude, I'm just like you said, it's raining a lot. So we're just with real estate and trying to get back up for summer plots and stuff like that. It's like coordinating is this.
It's been tough.
The challenge.
Yeah, I'm hoping I got good kills on everything I sprayed. Whatever that was a week ago. I don't know what day it is.
I see our Illinois stuff's turning pretty good.
Yeah, it looks great.
Nice to have some cameras on that.
Yep, that looks great. So yeah, we'll have that. We'll have somebody actually. We'll buy the seed, but somebody else is actually going to drill that for us.
The only areas that are left are like there was some sections I think after the fact we decided to widen up, and so you can see like on the pinch there's like that strip down the middle that didn't get sprayed or seeded with anything.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll have to get back and spray that. I mean, it'll end up being Braskas, I assume.
Yep. So yeah, I mean it's that time of year. It seems crazy, but it's freaking green out. Like I feel like we're way ahead of, at least up here in Pennsylvania, Ohio, like way ahead of where we're normally at. From a greening standpoint. But yeah, I mean it's been good. I mean we've started to see some bucks in Illinois and Ohio. Producing.
Dude,
that one I got in Ohio the other day was like, I'm pretty impressed.
You're further along than we are at the farm for sure. Yeah, I'm just nubbing out, starting to go on main beams and stuff. I don't have any twos or anything like that yet, but
yeah, I mean that one that I showed you the other day. I mean that deer, I might know what deer that is if it's him. He's 5 this year, and he was just a big framed 8-point last year. But same area, like clockwork.
Man, I feel like I don't have a good inventory of your Ohio bucks.
Me either.
I feel like you know all my bucks, but I don't know any of yours.
Well, I don't. That first year, I forget what I said, $5 over 5 years old on that property and several 4-year-olds. And then last year, that's
quite a few.
They all kind of just vanished, right, because of the logging.
Right.
So I had like two or 3 bucks that were 5, and then a couple 4-year-olds hanging around, and then even they kind of really dispersed out. So, yeah, I don't know I don't know if they'll all start to adapt back in this year and come back, or, I've heard a lot of people say it'll take 2 years before a lot of those deer will really feel comfortable and move back in. So we'll see. I don't think it'll take that long, especially if I put 5 acres of beans down in the bottom.
I agree.
When there's no ag around.
I think they come back in pretty quickly. I think they're used to that kind of thing.
Boy, I hit those new clover plots with some fertilizer the other day when I sprayed right before the rain, and they have just blown up, exploded. Yeah. So I need to, there's a lot of grass and broadleafs in them just because they're new plots. I need to come in with Cleth and 2,4-DB and hit those, and I'll probably just put some of that new Deer Grow 318-18 in there as well. But they're going to look, I would say, pretty freaking good. I may have to put some cereal grain in it this fall, but I think they'll look really good.
Yeah. It's funny. I went out, what day was that? They went to the farm.
Monday?
What's today? Thursday?
Yeah,
maybe it was Monday.
Yeah.
It was Monday. I went out, and that's the day I was going to spray, but then the weather turned on me. So I spent most of it, the first half of the day there anyways, like trying to get flags in the ground and just strategizing. And it's like, man, it's tough. Like, and it's a little more stressful because, when you start using serious chemicals like atrazine, and 2,4-D and stuff like that, that's a little bit, not entirely permanent, but it's more permanent than like just glyphosate.
Yeah, I mean, beans aren't growing if you put them in that.
So there's like a little bit more pressure to like do it right the first time. And, time is essentially of the essence right now. So I was really like, I was moving flags quite a bit and trying to just to like, I don't know, dude. It's like a whole new out. Like, did you have the same with Switch, especially like trying to understand how to incorporate that? Like
I still have. I'm still on it. I sprayed, right? I sprayed everything.
With just Gly?
No, with Gly and atrazine and 2,4-D.
Well, yeah. So you're committed with
I'm
at
committed.
least your Switch and your corn.
Yeah. Where my difficulty is, so Switch is a really small seed, like very small.
Smaller
Not like
than clover?
No, but it's small and thin. Like it's longer, thin. So I've been trying to read.
Nick?
I've been trying to. Damn it! I've been trying to read up on more of that because we talked about like turning and broadcasting and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like it seems like, at least with me, like I have that Tar River. Like I might be able to drill. Even in your case, I wonder if you broadcasted it and then cul-de-packed it. That would be enough versus actually disking and then doing that.
Oh.
Because the other thing that we talked about in the chemical side is that a lot of those chemicals want to be closer to the surface. So if you turn them,
well, I'm just disking because of thatch. Like a lot of the areas that I'm going to be,
me too.
I need soil exposure first.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat.
But I am going to disc and cul-de-pack. So I have an old ferminator.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to disc and cul-de-pack at the same time. Probably 2 passes. It'll be just a straight disc. I'm just turning it.
Yep.
And then a disc with a cul-de-pack, so it's a seed bed.
Just seed
and then
bed.
I'll seed, and then I'll cul-de-pack again, and then I'll put atrazine on top.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy, man. I don't know. Like, I mean, this is our first crack at it, so take this for what it's worth, guys, listening to this. But
I've got a couple of healthy like little sections though. I've yet to add up all those borders, like you said, but
they add up quick.
I've probably got like 2 to 2.5 acres, I think, of Switch.
Wow.
That I'm going to put in. The 2 bigger sections, one's over by that the Hall bale blind, and it's probably like a 3/4 acre block of Switch.
Wow.
That's like blocking in a bigger like little bedding pocket. I mean, it's nice.
Yeah,
so when that's
perfect transition,
it's all done, I'll have a nice little 2 acre, 3 acre area down there that's like locked in, and the other section is a big buffer between some stand locations that I have.
Yep.
On that main grain field and the ditch that they come out of. Yeah. So I'm just trying to push everything up towards me. And so this is where it starts to get complicated. It's like, okay, I can see the Switch and I can see the rest of the food. Now I want to incorporate, it was just beans. I want to incorporate a green element and a corn element. And I want to use either the Switch or the corn, because those are the 2 things that give structure to pinch movement down to stand sites.
Well, I mean, that's the stuff. I mean, really, it was, I don't remember if we talked about it or not. I mean, we spent the day with Chris Brackett on our farm. And, it was really, Chris was the one who was talking about, use of clover in particular as like a green source to drive and pull movement towards a shooting opportunity, and using Switch as both a funnel and an insulation on the woods.
Yeah.
His mindset, and we went on Chris's farm, is that, by using Switch, in a 12-foot buffer along his woods, that deer will bed in the middle of open timber because of that buffer on the outside. Now, that's Illinois, and farm ground, it might be different elsewhere, but like I kind of tried to take that same approach on at least my Kentucky farm with all the old pasture up top, and these coves that I have, try to put 12 foot of Switch, or at least that's what I'm planning, as a buffer into that from a transition area. And the downfalls of it, if you want to look at it for any downfalls, is that quickly starts to eat away at open ground from a food standpoint.
It does.
So
which is a real factor on smaller plots, especially brassicas.
Huge.
I'm a little, truthfully, it's like, I guess we'll see how it goes. But like, like the green plot I just mentioned that's going into one of the edges of that big grain field is like, it's only 1/2 acre. It's the biggest I can get it. And it's going to be brassicas. I don't know. I hope that's big enough. If not, I'm going to put oats or rye into it, and save it. But we'll see. We
talked about this the other day, and I guess I was talking with Jeff Sturgis and Jen the other day. Like, the cool thing about this podcast is we've talked to every like well-known consultant basically that's out. There's a few that we haven't, and I know people are like, hey, we should get Tony LaPrade on, and these guys, they're on the list, right? But if you think about the number of people from Strickland to Harper to Carl Miller to Jeff Sturgis to Don Higgins to Eric Long, like,
dude, I'll tell you what, too. Say what you want about Brackett. The
Brackett.
friggin' dude is a cold-blooded killer. Like, he's
Yes.
killed some giants, and he is, like, pretty close to our farm in Illinois. So I mean, it made a lot of sense to take advice from him. And after, say what you want about like the legal, like obviously he went through a whole bunch of things here, and that's kind of how our friendship started. And I've laughed with you a few times. It's like, dude, freaking Chris Brackett is out of our farm.
What did we?
Plant Miscanthus, like who in our wildest dreams thought we'd ever be here? But
what was the thing that I can't? We were like in just like work days basically, but like what were we talking about? Where it was something about like Chris Brackett said it was legal, so it must be right.
There was either the prior leaser or whatever. It's been pastured at one point. There was like a mineral. Thing that was in a barn. Like it was in a barn. They were stored in a barn right on the farmstead.
Yeah, it was the livestock. It was the livestock. They had a mineral lick for the livestock.
That's right. And so whether it was like pod from old livestock or deer were making their way in there, I wasn't with you, but you and Chris drove past it and you're like,
I was like, well, Chris, that looks like a great spot to put a camera. I was like, is that legal? He's like, absolutely. And I was like, well, if Chris Brackett says
what he said is that's as legal as it gets, bud.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't say that. Yeah, he's like, that's as legal. And then I was like, well, if Chris Brackett says it's legal, then it must be, right?
Yeah, it must be legal. We're going to take his advice for sure.
Oh, shit, I was dying. But to that point, Chris's kind of land life business, I guess, is like he at least looked at our property of like, how can we create better habitat, better food, and set ourselves. I guess we look at that property as fairly easy to hunt as it sets because it's just fingers along, CRP and where our food is. Chris looks at it as an opportunity to take blank canvases and design it to push and funnel those deer to your kill spots. And it was funny because...
and working with what's there. Cause like,
yeah, absolutely.
If I'll pat us on the back for anything, I think he essentially agreed with everywhere we were at, except for one stand. He's like, this is too far in here. And we talked about that.
Well, that was the surprising part. I think you and I were kind of like rolling our eyes out a little bit with Chris is that, and no offense to him.
Not rolling our eyes. No, I was trying to understand the perspective.
He is very safe in his hunting.
Yeah, extremely conservative.
And for when I talk about cold-blooded killers like... Ben Rising and these guys, like Ben is like, he's like, that deer's bedded here. I'm going to be right here waiting for him when he comes back.
Uber aggressive.
Like over top of it.
So funny crossover too. That deer the scissors deer that Ben killed, Chris has the sheds on from like the year before and like had pictures. So it's like, it's right in the same area.
Yeah. So it was, when Chris started to describe like all his stand placements and why he would be there.
I held the sheds.
Yeah.
At Chris's living room.
Yeah. It was like, man, like I can't believe how conservative this guy is. Now, I'll put that in perspective. Chris is hunting 70 plus days a year.
Yep.
We're not, and most of the people listening to this are not. So he's just, his thing when he would go into a spot and we would talk about it, it was very much surrounding like that one deer you're trying to kill, that mature buck who's smart as hell, the super king that you're trying to kill.
Well, and here's the thing: he lives there. This is where. And that's the point to be made is like the way to kill deer, or anything, frankly, is through observation. It's just watching patterns and then getting between them. And when you live there, I mean, literally, like his backyard is a brassica plot, and then it's surrounded by switch and from back into this big sanctuary or whatever it is. And so that's cool. That's the way to do it, Frank. I mean, that's I wish we could be in that situation, but we have to take and apply that to a situation where we have 7 to 10 days at a max, and maybe we can be strategic with weather patterns and stuff. So the level of, I want to understand that in its completion, especially for our stuff, even though I don't live in Ohio, but we're able to get there more frequently. But I want to understand that and apply that to our situation as like, I'm okay if I have to dive into that spot and it is, in Chris's opinion, overly aggressive, but I'm going to only hunt it once or twice and kill him and get out, then it is what it is.
Case in point, where you killed your bow buck in our...
That's the spot he didn't like.
Hunting hole. Yeah, he hated it. He was like,
I would never hunt this.
I would never hunt this. He's like, I would sit up there and I'd watch all the activity. And I'm like, yeah, but I've got 2 days to kill that deer. I can't just
I can't just sit back and watch. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's right. Like, I mean, it is super risky. Like, if you go in there, the wind could swirl or anything could happen to where he gets you and he's gone and you never kill him.
So this is cool. This is like a level that I've never been able to, I've not been at before. I don't think he's worried about killing him. He's like, I'm going to kill it. Like
he is.
I'm going to kill it. And
very Lee Lukoski.
Lukoski's got the same thing. And like, if you, and it's not an arrogance necessarily. There's an ego, there's a healthy ego that lets you get there. DeQuisto's got the same thing. Andre does, you know, and those guys are just deadly because of it.
Yep.
But that mindset, I think that the next step of that is, okay, I know I'm going to kill him if I want to kill him. How do I get them to survive? How do I get this deer to 6 years old? How do I get him to 7 years old?
Yeah.
That is where hunting conservatively and staying on the outskirts and giving them those areas that we're talking about diving in to kill 4 and 5 year old bucks, ideally 5 or 6, you know, whatever. But as we're figuring that out, that's where that mindset, I think, comes into play.
Well, and frankly, for us and for a lot of people listening, that's foreign. Like, I'm getting deer to 6 and 7. Holy shit, I'm trying to get them to 4, you know?
Right.
In most cases.
Well, around here, but, you know, so we got 1 year under our belt in Illinois, and be anxious to get those teeth back to confirm our thinkings there. But,
I would, all the deer we killed were over 5. I would get 5 or older.
I think, and I don't have any history to go off of, but just based on the body size and, you know,
teeth and
stuff like that. I think the 2 bucks that you and I killed with our bows are 5. I think they're both 5.
Yeah, and Floppy was
Floppy's
7.
at least, it's probably
6 or 7. Yeah, yep.
I think. Agree. But we sent those teeth into whatever deer age.
We also, I mean, no doubt, we have a horse on the property right now. That one deer, although he's not showing much for antlers, but his body size is enormous.
Yeah, the one that was at the
fence gap.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. He also
that's a big deer.
He also has large testicles and a wiener.
Large talons.
Like, at first I was like, is that a plant behind him? No, it was his dong hanging.
Cock and balls, yeah.
Just straight hanging already. I'm like, oh my God, dude, come November, it's gonna be dragging.
Well hung. Yeah, I see like 2 tracks and then there's like a line back.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
That is hilarious.
That's a mature deer if I've ever seen one.
Speaking of firming things up.
Yeah. the old Ron Jeremy buck, we're going to call him here.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
It's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt, it stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. But yeah, so, but it was cool to kind of see a whole different level of thinking. And, when you talk about a guy like Rising's similar to us, right? I mean, he's going out to the Midwest and he's going for 5 days, 7 days, 10 days at a time, but it's, he's there and gone. He's got to get back to work. So I think his style has to be aggressive to be able to tag out in that condensed time frame. Whereas
you do.
Chris and Lee and these guys who are hunting, they're getting deer to 6 and 7 because they're not being aggressive, because they'll wait it out all season. Chris said it before. He's like, man, if I had to just wait till the late season, I'd kill them all.
Right. And you would.
Yeah.
You would.
Just knowing where the food is and where to be for an evening. He'd kill them all. So yeah, it's an interesting take for us. Also, I think his giving them space discussion, where it's like, hey, they know I'm here. I've made it well known. This is my side. This is their side. I don't go over there. And just so happens when I can get positioned right with the wind, they're on their side and they never know I'm there and I kill them.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
And so the thought process is basically, if we're going to give them that side, I'm going to keep this side. I'm going to use things like switch and barriers and terrain features to push them towards food sources that are right on the edge of my side.
Right where they come together.
That's the transition zone there, and I'm going to access from the opposite side. And so the paths will never cross. The analogy that he uses that makes a ton of sense to me is red paint and blue paint. And I'll give him full credit for this. If you can imagine that every time you go into the woods, especially in the deer side of things, it's like, imagine you're just dripping in red paint. And we've talked about this. It's like guys think they get in and got out clean, and just because one didn't see you or blow at you while you're down there. The reality is like the next 3 to 5 days, or until you get a heavy rain or something like that, like if they come across your red paint, they know you were there.
They know you were there.
And it's alarming to them. They don't like that. It's gonna throw their pattern off.
Because you're not normally in their area.
Exactly. They're like, this is not right. This is off. Something's happened. There's pressure here. And they'll change accordingly. As opposed to, blue paint is in areas that are essentially okay. They are still going to come across those areas, I think, at night, or think about what deer will do under cover of darkness. They'll
even
walk right up to your house and eat your
seasons,
shrubs,
like this time of year and stuff. Yeah.
And so near home sites, homesteads, accessing up, close to roads and stuff. They're not as alarmed by that. They're like, okay, yes, I got a guy came through here.
They're there all the time. Yeah, we know they're there.
But it's not going to throw me off. And so if you can, I think, keep in mind those two types of intrusion and try to keep the two as separated as possible, you can really be efficient with not letting the deer know they're being hunted.
And it goes along with,
and that's the trick to keeping an old one there.
Yeah, it goes along with, like, I think what we've talked about, for years, when you think about like sanctuary areas and stuff. Like the whole point of a sanctuary area is so that you don't put red paint into their area, right? I mean, that's the goal there. The thought process, though, is, how you access those places and how you hunt those places. Like if you have a large sanctuary, the reality is that's not an easy thing to hunt. And even if you're playing off of those sanctuaries of where these deer are coming out based on wind direction and stuff, now you look at it at a micro level and it's like, okay, deer's coming out of this area. This is all essentially, I want to stay out. At some point, there's a transition there, and that transition point is where you kill them. In Chris's case, I think a lot, it's very secure. I would say for us, the way that we hunt, there would be very few areas that we're not dripping red paint into an area we're not supposed to. And it's just because of time, commitments and opportunities for us to hunt.
What do you mean?
So, case in point, where you went and shot that buck in Honey Hole, Chris would say, we dripped red paint straight through there to go kill that deer.
And it changed. So we were blue paint for a while until you get to that.
Till that edge.
To the wood edge.
Yep.
And then your red paint.
Then your red paint. Yeah. So he's saying, like, I would have stopped where the blue paint needed to be, and you could have still probably killed that deer. Maybe if I had 3 weeks.
Eventually. And so that's where we sat and we argued for a while. Because he's like, he wanted to go just as far distance-wise, but he would have gone up the tree line to this different area. And I'm like, well, dude, every time he crosses that, he's going to smell that you were there. It's like, it's blue paint.
It's blue paint.
He knows I'm there. It's the field edge. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's hard and I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And this is where I think he would say, fine, it's your decision to make on this. Is like I do think we have to be it's not ideal. I would love to never put red paint on the property and kill that deer, but time is of the essence, and we do have to be effective with time. And so there's a time to be aggressive. There's a time to get red paint in there, but you want to kill him before he ever knows it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the trick. He's basically crossing your red paint while he's pouring out red blood.
Exactly. So, like, the worst case scenario is guys are just constantly going in and leaving red paint.
That's the issue.
All up in their buck bedding areas, and like they might tolerate it for a certain level, or they'll just move around you. But I do think once they get to a certain level of age or maturity, they just aren't going to tolerate it. There is probably enough areas they can go to where there's no red paint, and they're going to feel safer.
So the question I had from some people, I was in this discussion of kind of going back and forth, probably because I said something about Ohio when I was spraying out there, is that like, well, how does this apply to more of a wooded situation?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, it could be public too, but a wooded situation. And it's like, man, it's hard. Like the wherever my wooded sanctuary is where I don't want to put red paint.
Well, in the sense of farmland, because it's precious.
Yes.
Right? Timber equals cover.
Yeah.
But in timber country, timber's just timber.
Timber's timber.
What's the word? Not the opposite of timber, but like what's going to provide habitat in timber? I mean, in a lot of cases, it's where tornadoes have gone through, clear cuts, small openings, just gaps where you have, and so in that case, that's where you don't want to put your red paint.
Exactly.
You can, and Madison had a good point about, so what I said was, in farm country, I have come to appreciate pastures because they create dead zones that I can blow wind into, I can use for access, etc. He reciprocated and said, we see the same thing with big timber. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's areas that are just essentially monocultures. It's biological desert. I can go right through it and blow my timber. There's
Yeah.
not going to be a big buck in it, and I can
Yeah.
use that to approach those more pocketed areas where there's more habitat.
Correct. And even if he does cross over that, it's usually that is a blue paint area. It's like, well,
Right,
somebody's
exactly.
going to come through there. I don't need to
Exactly.
be there. I don't feel like this is my bedroom that I need to
Dude,
be.
that was a breakthrough for me. I mean, if some people hear that and can apply that to their, it's kind of like you can look at everything a little bit differently.
Yeah, well, I think you can. It goes back to, I think Drury was one. I can't remember who else. Drury was one for sure, where Mark was basically like, I don't use the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Set it up, I get out, I don't use it.
No presence.
No presence whatsoever. And so, in essence, depending on how he sets it up, like the majority of his farm could be an area where you don't want red paint. Because, a deer could adapt to feeling secure in all of those places, switch, besides the food plots, essentially.
I think it's fun to, like for sure that changes. Like it's not, I don't think it's strictly red or strictly blue either.
Mm-mm.
So an example of that would be during October and November, which happens to overlap with hunting season. So we take advantage of it as much as we can. I think some of the red paint is blurred with blue because you have a lot of farming activity happening, like in the farm fields and stuff.
Right.
So you may have an edge of a cornfield that butts up to like a clear cut, and for the whole summer, nobody's been there. That's a red paint area.
Mm-hmm.
But October, mid to late October, early November,
Combine.
they're
everything,
here in
yeah.
the combines going around, and it's not just that specific location, but the deer, they're moving, they're in
Yeah.
and they're seeing that activity, and they're like, oh, whoa, things are kind of getting thrown off. We're getting moved around here and stuff. So you have a little bit more ability to fly under cover of like that mixed paint, and you can really be deadly with that, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's an
Look at
interesting
Winky.
concept.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Winky's great.
You know what I mean?
so-
That's the day to move your blind in on a cut cornfield. The day he cuts it and
You
you
move
move
it
a
in.
blind in there,
Yeah,
they don't know the difference.
yeah. They're just like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
yeah, I don't get it. I think it's really cool to start to think about that level of how you're visualizing a property. And I mean, even if you're hunting public, I mean, and it's hard to say because you can't control it all, but think of it the same way. Like those those areas we looked at it in Iowa where we parked and we came the whole way back around and there's a giant buck bed looking right at the parking area. Well, that's a blue paint area to a point.
Yep.
Right? He will let you park there and walk through all day long.
Yep.
The moment you deviate to the right to come up onto that pond levee,
Red alert.
he's gone. He don't want to be in there.
Yeah.
And so it's the same way on public. Like you just need to know, like we talk about avoiding areas and stuff. But if you look where people are moving through, they will tolerate that all the time. The moment you say, well, I'm going to press up next to his bedding here, you could blow it. It's an aggressive move. You could also kill him, but you better make sure that you're doing it at the right time with the right conditions. Otherwise, when you leave, you just basically put red paint all over that area. And it could, I don't want to take credit for it, but I think a lot of this, especially in the aggressive hunting style, is why I kill a lot of deer on my first sit. I go in, it's the first time I'm tracking red paint into an aggressive area. I shoot them that night and I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Versus like I don't kill many deer on my fourth trek into those places.
Right, because they're aggressive sits.
They're aggressive sits,
And you're timing it with good weather conditions, so your
Yep.
odds are high.
I'm trying to do everything I can, and I know that I didn't know at that time, but in theory now I know I'm tracking red paint through the wrong area.
Mm-hmm.
But when I get there and I kill them, then it's okay. If I don't kill them and I come back the next day, I would say my odds are decreasing.
Right. And on top of that, from a herd building, like a property management standpoint, that's where Brackett, I think, was trying to educate us that, your 4 and 5+ year old deer are not going to tolerate that for very long.
No.
They're going to move off and either get killed somewhere else or they're going to relocate.
Well, and I think when you break down like farm ag area versus big woods area, which, now I've kind of got experience with both from our properties, those farm areas, it's a lot tighter. Right, I mean, you
Isn't
can't,
it fun, dude? How much fun is hunting farm country?
Oh, it's crazy.
That's pretty awesome.
I mean,
right?
you can't venture far from the fields before you're tracking in red, right?
Yeah.
In my wood country, I could go everywhere and it's blue, and here's just a little center point.
To me, it's more like fly fishing. Like from a small pockety standpoint, it's like you got to be really strategic. Like they can see you coming, you got to be low.
Yep.
You got to.
Yep. You're throwing
flip
natives
casting in there.
Yep.
Whereas like big timber hunting, it's more like fishing a lake.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, we're gonna motor over to this area here and check that out. And
and they don't. Yeah, they just tolerate it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also think ground cover is the other thing. Like we talk about ground cover and ag, but I think a lot of that's under the cover of darkness. Whereas I think there's a lot of movement in big timber country under daylight conditions. It's just they're covering so much ground, and it's all cover, right? It's just they're just moving under all cover. So I think that's the hardest part for people to really fathom, especially when we're talking whether it's a Sturgis or a Bracket or Winky or whoever, is like try to take what they're saying and apply it to what you're hunting. It will work. It'll fit. It's not square peg in a round hole type of thing. It will work. You just have to use your imagination and say, okay, he's saying don't go into this little patch because this is bedding. Well, what does that look like on my large wooded public that I'm hunting? You know where the bedding is. Just apply the same theory.
It's a lot of fun, and I'd like to do even more of it. I think once you get to a certain point of understanding, anybody can get there, right? I think anybody can gain enough knowledge to even by understanding what sign looks like, or how deer are going to use terrain. I think you can most people who are paying attention and spend enough time studying it and have experience in the field can get to a point where you understand, okay, this is generally, I think, where the deer are at on this property. And so with that baseline, it's fun to go in and try to, like, with different strategies and stuff, look at how you would approach it. And so like the whitetail group, Bobby
and those guys
have had some guys, Rising's been a part of that. I think they've had Luster out a few times, and
and
those are fun to watch. And Lakoski to say, they're like, well, here's how I would do that. Here's what I would do. And so we even did that with Chris that day. We're like, we have some experience on his property. I think we all had that baseline of knowledge. He has more expertise in Illinois for sure.
Yep.
We have more, probably not more states. He's hunted a lot of states over the years and stuff. But anyways, we're coming to it with that, and it was a lot of fun.
I would say we're coming to it with more of a mindset of I hunt pressured ground.
Yep.
He's coming out of it more of a mindset of I'm hunting unpressured deer, and they just do deer things.
Right. And so case in point, like there would be a ditch right by the house that we're like, would never pay attention to. We're like, I don't know, it's right by the house here. Like, what do you mean we got to go into the back there? And he's like, I don't know, I think
every deer comes right here.
I think right here. I think right by the house. He's like, I think you wear the farmer's vest down here, you drop it at the base of the tree, and you get right here. Yeah. I'm like,
he couldn't, he was like, you kill every deer on the farm right here. And I'm like, what?
I love it. I love harnessing. They're not dumb. Like they know that Carl lives in that farm, and they know.
Yeah, and he putts from the house
when he
to
passes
the
away. When he passes away, which I hate to say, but everybody does at some point, and his is coming. He's an older guy. They'll know.
Yes.
They'll
because activity will decrease.
They'll know, and they'll realize, like, hey, there's a little spike in activity that, like, whatever. Family's going to be there for a short period of time. We'll have to go and take care of some things, and then it will stop. And I don't know what it will do. I mean, I
think they'll pinch closer to the house. I think their activity.
I don't think they're avoiding the house at all now.
Well, no, but I don't think that they'll. And this will be interesting to see. I don't think that they worry when they come around there because it's that blue paint space.
I think they're totally comfortable with it.
But I think that if there's less activity there for an extended period of time, that blue space will start to contract.
They'll shrink around it.
Yeah,
they'll bed right in the backyard.
We have a big pole barn right in front of the house, giant apple tree on it. Last year, I remember it was like broken. It was so loaded, and there were scrapes underneath it.
Yeah.
And so, like, clearly bucks were coming up there, but I bet it was under the cover of night. I guarantee, like, as that decreases, you'd have more daylight activity to that apple tree early in the season. We also are putting in a big standing grain field there, which is a complete different change too.
Yeah.
So
it's so awesome.
So
dude.
when you start to think about that, and I guess that gives, as I kind of look at access on a lot of my places, it's like, man, I try not to access this. It's like, well, maybe in Chris's mind, he's like, dude, establish it. Let them know that this road, this access is your road.
Yeah.
It's mine. You could cross it. Just know that you're going to smell me. I'm there.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, normally it's like, man, I don't want to keep driving up in there. I don't want to keep driving. No. You want them to know that you're going to
establish a pattern.
But there's the relationship there is that there's no threat with it.
Yeah.
It's just you driving.
It's powerful to understand.
It's just you driving. You're just going in and out. You're working food plots. You're putting minerals out. You're putting cameras out, whatever.
associate it with positive, something positive.
Yeah,
Whether you're switching the feeder on, whatever, filling a water hole, or just no negative interaction,
no negative
whatever
interaction.
it is. Well, dude, a lot of those guys
just drives by them and they're like, well, he's gone.
Who manage super high end properties. I mean, run down the whole list of who. I think Higgins is on his property all the time. Like he's on his property all the time. Grant Woods is literally all the roads drive through the middle of foods and stuff. It's like those deer all associate that either with no negative consequence or in some cases even a positive experience. And you can really leverage that and take advantage of it by the fact that, deer can't count basically. Mm-hmm. So if I can use that same movement even into the season and get dropped off at a stand or something like that, they're never going to know. They're never going to see it coming.
Well, I think, I know he's using more cell cams now, but I remember last year having this conversation with Shirk, because Shirk's running 180 cameras or something. And more than half of those are standard cams because they don't have service, right? You can't do that. And I was like, well, dude, how often do you check these? He's like, weekly. And I was like, normally, especially from a public land standpoint, I'm like, damn, man, that's like a lot of pressure, right? That was the whole benefit of cell cams. It's like, not, but he would get big deer on them. My guess is that the deer just are like, he comes in and checks the camera and he goes out and they know he's there. They know, but there's no negative connotation, like no negative impact from him coming in and out and checking that camera during the summer and early fall.
Well, I don't even think you would have to.
What do you mean?
I would almost say you could get away with checking those cameras once a year.
I know, but I'm just saying, I know he
operate purely on historical data.
He is checking those more frequently than that. I'm thinking those mature deer are just adapting to that. There's no negative impact from him coming in, checking that camera and leaving, and then they come out and hit the scrape or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's probably an attempt, like even in those scenarios, like there's blue paint areas, if you're coming off of the logging road.
I'm parking here and then I'm walking through this logging road and then I drop down and get it and I'm back. Yeah, that there is blue paint area.
You'll tolerate it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird as you start to try to expand on it, but I think the big stuff that negative impact thought process of, man, I don't really want to go up in here. I don't want to do it. And you don't through like the middle of a bedding area or whatever it is. But like on the outskirts or to your food plots and stuff, you want the deer to recognize that is an area you use and that they cross, but nothing happens. And then in Chris's mind is like the moment the conditions are right during the season, you get to that point of interaction down, basically to where you're on the downwind side of it. And that deer is going to come through in a blue-red interaction area, and he's never going to know you're there, and you're going to kill him. Dude. He was adamant. He was like, every buck in the last few years I've killed, or every buck that he's killed in a long time, he's like, they had no idea I was there. No idea. Mm-hmm. Didn't look at me, didn't smell, didn't think, something's off. He's like, had no idea until I put one through him.
Yep.
And he was adamant about it. And I could, a lot of the deer that I've killed, especially like our deer in Illinois I killed this year, I mean, that deer was staring me down, staring me down. He just blew it that he took one more look over his shoulder because he wasn't sure, and I put one in him. But
you probably got some Illinois grace in it, too. It's like a Pennsylvania buck would have.
Oh, he wouldn't have given
you that chance.
Yeah, he'd been in the next county.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Even Floppy, he
knew.
He was turning and starting to go. Well, he just couldn't find what I was calling at him with. So.
Yeah.
And guns were going off all over the place, and it was tense.
So yeah, I mean, it's that, and they worked out, right? We killed the deer, but in that mindset, and I'm sure there's plenty of people listening. And like I said, I think last podcast, I'm kind of not in a like spoiled way, but I'm envious if you live or you're right there, and the property you hunt and manage is right there, because you have this opportunity to be more conservative. You have this opportunity to observe. Don't take that for granted. As it unbelievable, even on a management side. I mean, we just talked about how hard it is to time and spray and stuff. It's like it's a great evening. I'm gonna go out and spray, or I'm gonna go out and mow. I'm gonna go out and disc. Like, you have so much more ability to be flexible on that when it's right there. Don't let that slip by.
Yeah. Well, we have an advantage too. Like, it's easier for us to not put pressure on the property because we're not there. We don't. It's not like we have to refrain.
Well, and that, I don't know. Like, that's where Chris has kind of got me thinking. It's like, yes, I don't want to put pressure in my bedding areas and in those areas that I want the deer to feel like it's their space. But it's also like, or Lukoski. I mean, Lukoski's like, I'm on my farm driving around all over the place. Like,
yes, but there's 12 of them and one is 800 acres.
Sure.
So, I mean, how much pressure can you really put on a place?
Big difference than our 70 or 40
exactly.
or whatever. Yeah, I completely agree.
But it's not like you want constant activity. It's just there's a level of activity that they'll tolerate. Ideally, it's just associated with, a farmer and with certain types of the year and certain types of stuff. But you don't want to be in your timber all the time, if ever. I mean, there should be spots that you probably those red paint areas. Don't go in them.
Yeah. So I mean, what I've done, like on the Ohio farm, is I've established essentially a smaller amount of interior roads and one large
That's
perimeter
huge.
road.
That's huge. Literally, from the mindset of like the red and blue paint thing, I think what those roads do is if all that area previously had been like, or at least a splotchy red paint type area, you now have blue lines all through it.
Yep.
And you're okay to walk them.
Yep.
Even if you're walking through a red paint area on a road, they know that that's your road.
It's a road.
It's a straight line.
Yep.
It's man-made and they know it and they'll tolerate it.
Yep. They'll cross it. They'll know I crossed it. Like that is our purple interaction.
And I think that's purple. That's the colors, right?
Yeah.
I think that's
red and blue makes purple.
I think that is right, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Real quick, 4th grade field trips.
Mm-hmm.
My teacher, boys were blue, girls were red, whatever. And she would always say, we thought it was the funniest thing at the time. She goes, all right, on this field trip, no purpling.
Bro,
whoa.
My summer camp used to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Is that just like
mixing of red and blues?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just anything.
like,
no shenanigans whatsoever.
Yeah, no sitting by each other.
no sitting by each other?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nothing. No shoulders brushing. Don't even look at them.
Dang.
Dude, at summer camp,
funny.
we had separate sides of camp. Like, and
Really?
there was a line. Like, you don't cross over. That's where all the girl stuff is at. It's where all the guy stuff is at. You don't go over there.
That's funny.
That was the best part about like track and cross country is like on the bus rides. It was like you found your red partner there. You know,
You were purpling all the time.
I was purpling everywhere.
Wow. Wow. It's like a big game of capture the flag. Like, the minute you cross that line, it's like you're behind enemy lines.
You're behind enemy lines.
Yeah. You better be right. You see a counselor over the hill. Like,
I guess that was like freshman and sophomore year in the dorms were like split, blue side, red side, common area in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. You had to get like the TA or the TA. No, not TA. RA.
That's teacher's assistant. Yeah, resident assistant.
Resident. The RA. You got caught on the other side of enemy lines. You better have like a red to back you
gotta have a good excuse. Is what you gotta have. Those RAs weren't that smart. Ours were all on different levels.
Oh,
so
really?
you could just take the elevator up a level and now you're on a girls' floor.
Oh, wow. We were just split down the middle. It was like left side was boys, right side were girls, common area in the middle.
Oh, those were good times. Remember, watching.
Also the basement. The basement was a crossover. That's where laundry was and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You might cross paths with a female down there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Would you do my laundry? So, but yeah.
Talk about feeling a load.
Yeah. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Rack Hub.
Well, dude, sheds are starting to hit the ground.
Yeah, and although we usually don't find many of them, we've done pretty well this season so far.
I would say for just, a handful of walks, we've got a pile of sheds to show for it. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, if shed season would end today, I think it was pretty successful.
So this year, we're partnering with Rack Hub. It's an antler mounting system for your sheds.
Yeah, and obviously, people who've watched our podcast, we've got this massive pile of sheds that are on the table at all times, but you guys took the time to set up Wide Boy Shed on the R1, which is a really cool way to now have that thing right off to my left-hand side during the podcast.
So some of these sheds just call for a little bit more appreciation, I guess. So rather than being on a pile on the table, we're going to mount them on the wall, and they look awesome. So
yeah. And so if anybody wants to try Rack Hub, you can use the code HUNTR10, HUNTR10 at rackhub.com to get 10% off your order.
Use Rack Hub to make the most of your shed season.
Purpling.
Anyways, purpling.
Yeah. So that's it. They're
so
going
no purpling
to
with the deer. There you go. You can use the same term and apply it to deer hunting.
I do think that...
Great analogy, Nick. Nice job.
I do think that I think that your deer in larger wood settings where you're talking about logging roads and stuff, I think they tolerate more of that purpling during daytime hours than the farm country deer do. Just because of, most of these deer, unless we're talking early season and summer coming into a bean field, like they're not leaving that area to come and feed in a giant field, open field area without like dawn, dusk, and cover of darkness. Mm-hmm. But I've I've got cameras. I see plenty of deer crossing, logging roads in the middle of the day in October just because they're moving from one area to the next, wind switched or whatever.
Yep.
And that's because they're in cover. Even though it might be more open, and in that case, it's that purple area, they're in cover. They're okay to move from one point to the next. They're not crossing wide open fields and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's all based around where the deer are. So, like, initially, just you go in there and figure it out.
Yep.
Go figure out where the deer are at, and those are your red areas. So hey, they want to be here because of how the topography is, how what the cover is here, and then just branch out from there. And how does everything correspond with that area? Because ultimately, you're trying to get close, right, and take advantage in a way that can be accessed and even imagine your wind is red. It's like you don't want to be upwind of a red area and blow it in.
That's where Chris and we were having. That's where our conflict was with Chris. I think is that we're saying, okay, well, Chris, I understand you're saying we're gonna drip it. We can get in pretty damn clean here. All right, we can get in pretty clean. Buck's gonna come through here. We're good. And he's like, well, what if the buck comes in behind you? And it's like, well, we're pretty sure he's going to come through here. He's probably not. But in his mind, it's like that's red paint getting blown back behind you, and you have huntable ground you're giving up. Thus, when he goes into that conservative point on the corner of the property line, he's like, even though you have red paint going behind you, it's going on property you can't hunt anyways. Right? It's going to your neighbor's property, basically.
Yep.
In some cases, he's like, I want my red paint blown into my neighbor's property.
Yeah.
And so that I think was our hard part, because he looked at it as we're giving up part of our huntable area. We're looking at it as we're just trying to close the distance to be in the game for the shot. And I think that's just the mindset of us having to be aggressive in our places back home versus maybe what he's used to out there.
Well, the negative I think he saw of that stand that we had in there is like he had to admit, because I killed one out of there. He's like, you could kill one out of there, and we did. But you're shrinking the deer space that they need to live, to survive, to grow, to get old, and that is the objective. You want to have an area where they can do that.
And in that same breath, he thinks that eventually we would have killed it in one of the conservative spots around there, anyways.
Which he's probably right.
We just don't have the time to sacrifice to that.
Sure.
Or we have to be okay not killing them and trying to get them to 6 or 7 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's something we haven't had to think about previously.
Yeah, well, and that just comes with familiarity or comfort with deer movement. It's like he's perfectly fine seeing that thing 20 times before he kills it, if he can sit out and hunt it conservatively. Whereas so many of us are like, man, we might see him once, and I got to kill him that time.
Yeah, or that's it. That was my opportunity. Yeah, that concept of him saying, like, yeah, I might see that deer 20 times and then I'll kill him in December. It's like, dude, if I lay eyes on the deer that I'm hunting, I better have been within the opportunity to kill him, or that's probably it.
Right.
Yeah, there's a good chance I won't see him again. Not because necessarily he knew I was there, maybe, but more so because it's just I don't see him that often. They're just not that visible. He may have been bedding here for the last 2 weeks, and now he's half mile over here for the next 2 weeks. He just doesn't see that much out there.
Yep.
Because he feels like he's giving them the space and they don't need to go anywhere.
They're tricky buggers, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting thing. And then, take that and go into, and this was really hard for me to fathom, is like taking food plot area, food area, and narrowing it to get those deer to basically not want to just feed in it, but just feed through it.
Well, and here's what it takes to understand that too. Like all of these guys seem to be in agreement about like, this is totally the opposite of where I was for a long time, which was, seems like a great spot for, just to kill a deer. Let's put a food plot here.
Yep.
In theory, it makes sense. Everywhere I was
bring
like,
the deer
we should put a food plot here.
Yep,
we should
bring
put a
the
food
deer
plot
in here. I'll sit here. I'll kill him here.
And I think while you can do that, I mean, the bucks will eventually come through there. Anytime you put something like that in a deer area, it's going to push everything back. It's like you're establishing something, and it's pushing movement, especially bedding, back out and away from it.
And this ties back into what Sturgis talks about a lot,
exactly,
which is that depth of cover.
Exactly.
Yeah. Here's the food. What's the depth of cover look like?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so this is where it was kind of like all of a sudden you and I are looking at each other like, okay, like Sturgis says this, Higgins says
We're
this,
getting
Chris
it,
says this. Like everybody.
Well, and it's funny because
They all
everybody
say
seems
the
to hate
same-
Sturgis for some reason, but like a lot of them are saying a lot of the same stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and there's healthy disagreements in maybe when and how to access certain stands and all of that. But like overwhelmingly, a lot of how deer will use an area and what they'll tolerate and stuff, I think is relatively on the same page.
Yeah, I think it may be said differently, but it aligns pretty much like, yeah, that's what he said.
Mm-hmm. You're like, no, but I hate that guy.
Yeah.
But he says the
but
same
he said
thing.
the same thing. Not the exact same way, but it's the same thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think that was the mindset. It was like, okay, cool. Here's a great, for me, I didn't even have much choice. It was like, I have a opening. I have to put food here. There are no other places for me to put food here. And that changed movement dramatically. And especially from a hunting standpoint, it's like, well, now that that's changed, I can't get back here to catch them coming to or from the food because that's essentially a red area. Like I would be in their space, which I don't want to be in. So it's like,
it's tough. It's tough because like not every property, in fact, the smaller they get, the less likely they are to have all of the components that whatever comprise consists of a linear movement.
mm-hmm.
It's rare unless you have like multiple hundreds of acres or whatever it would take to have the bedding,
mm-hmm.
the staging,
Mm-hmm.
A loop of scrapes, ultimately to a big enough destination food source to sustain all of the surrounding properties. That just doesn't happen all the time. Like chances are you have a few of those. And so the objective is to, well, it depends. This is where it's really fun to look at a certain property. So like on our place, on a Roberts, in Ohio, I have enough of those. I think we have about a full course of movement. Maybe there's another bigger destination food source that they're also hitting on the way back.
Yeah, but for the most part,
I've got 3/4 to 90% of it. And so in that case, the goal is to develop each of those stages as much as possible.
Yep.
Do TSI in the red in the bedding areas, secure that, firm it up as much as possible.
Firm it up.
Have huntable access points. So like I showed you my bentonite pond, my tin shed gas line stand,
pasture and
community scrape there. He's done. That's his and I have there's an oat plot right there. Oats, clover, whatever it is, close to bedding, they're done there. They're dropping down into the East Twin, which I've reduced. So that's one area.
Used to be a big plot.
It's going to be brassica. So I'm reducing it by like a quarter to probably quarter in size because I'm wrapping the perimeter essentially in switch. Conservatively, I don't want to have just like a circle and a few holes that they're coming in.
Circle.
Yeah, more like a square.
Uh-huh.
And I've got some big openings in it. I don't want a big contiguous ring of fire there.
Yep.
I want, and it's an acre and a half is what it was to begin with. So it's big enough they feel comfortable. And
still at least an acre.
There's bedding all around it and stuff. And then they're dropping down into, what was my 10.5 acre bean field. Now it's 7 acres of beans, 3 acres of corn, and then some areas of brassicas around the other side of it too. So it's a much more diverse, holistic movement pattern now that I've got multiple points to take advantage. I've got a box blind on that brassica plot surrounded in switch. I've got a tree stand up by that water hole and the community scrape. You good?
Yep.
And I just feel like I can get it. Not only can I hunt them there, but I can get them to survive there.
Well, I think that's the biggest piece of it. If we start looking and combining what we're hearing from Sturgis and Brackett and Higgins and Lukoski and Drury, we used, at least for me, I used to think point to point, which was deer bed here, I'll put food plot here, deer will come from food plot or from bedding to food plot and vice versa. Right? That was it.
How basic in hindsight to think like that's all they did.
That's how you establish a property. There's bedding. I have an opening. I'll put food here. They'll bed here. They'll come here. And that's where I'll kill them. That's it. And then in reality, it's like, well, that's purely a transition food plot. The destination's out here. The scrapes are over here. And they're literally doing this giant loop on a daily basis. Yeah. And it's like, you could kill them in so many other probably better places from an access and from a standpoint, but yet you just sit the food. And you sit what you think is the food, and really it's just, a salad before the main course type of thing.
Yeah. I love the human crossover. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about me this morning, getting from my house out of bed to come here to this podcast. I'm like, I had to go down the stairs. I had to go over and I had to like let the dogs out. And while they're out there, I stood out on the deck for just a minute. I was just there. I went inside. I made my coffee. I made my breakfast. I went over to the stove. I'm doing that. I took it back out to the deck and I'm eating it out there and the dogs run around and stuff. And it's like, and then I'm going down to the office and I'm checking this. It's like, dude, I got to go grab my keys off the shelf and stuff. It's like all those little things. Deer are doing too.
Absolutely.
In and around their bedrooms and on the way to their final destination. So you can have you can have a point A and you can have a point B, and that is where they're starting and that is where they're going. But there's a crap load of stuff that's happening in between. And the more of those that you can have occupying daylight movement and that you can access and take advantage of is how you do it. That's how you do it.
I think the other side of it, now I'll use, because it's a small property, I've got 28 acres behind my house here in Pennsylvania. And most of it's wood. It's literally at the base of a mountain. It's kind of like a funnel down. And historically, I had 4 or 5 tree stands, right? And I would come from my house into the depths of the property, and I would try to get up on the ridges and try to get these bucks that were rutting coming along the ridges and stuff. We didn't see anything. Like, no deer. Like, I think I saw one-year-old 8-put from the tree stand. Blowing them out every way. We created a 1 acre food plot, which is not that big. 1 acre food plot where we had like a 1/4 acre before. We put a box blind and I put another tree stand depending on the wind conditions. Actually, I've got 2. So I've got 2 tree stands and a box blind on that plot. All we do is hunt around that plot. That's it. And I've got deer movement from the northwest coming in. I've got deer movement from the southwest coming in, and I've got deer movement from the southeast coming in to that core area. Yeah. It's only 28 acres. So I can sit there, and every night deer are coming into that plot.
Yeah, and so your property base, a lot of small properties are this way. Probably is like a majority of them are red paint areas.
It's almost all red paint except for the trail to the food plot and back.
That's right.
That's it.
They're comfortable with you there. They're comfortable with you in the yard. Even they'll be back in the food plot there. As soon as you go into or past that food plot,
done.
It's a big deal.
Gone.
You're like, whoa.
I mean, we've blown deer off of that food plot coming in an evening. They've been out early. They run up in the woods. An hour later, they're back. Because they're like, oh, well, they're always up here doing something.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, there's you want to hunt there's guys that are just like, I want to be in a tree stand in the timber.
Yep.
Regardless of, they're kind of willing to throw caution to the wind there, but I think you just have to take each situation.
I think you can. You just, if it's a small property like the one, like my house, you just, like, I'm within arm's reach of that blue paint food source. So I'm playing the wind. Like, so last year, the buck that I hit that I didn't find, I was in my tree stand. There's a really tight funnel on the edge of my food plot before it drops over essentially like a little high wall. And those deer run that funnel. They stay right into that wood edge in between the food source and that high wall. And I rattled him up through there. He went into the food plot, and then I called him back before I shot him. That's as deep as I can go without just red painting the shit out of half of my property. For the longest time, I just did it anyways because it was like, well, I've got 28 acres. Like, these deer move in different spots. This is how I'm going to hunt them. The reality is I have to have, and it's not the final destination, right? But I've got a core food source that they are utilizing at some part during the day. They're feeding on acorns and browse as they're moving through the woods. But as long as I'm around that core food source, which is the blue paint area, and I'm playing the wind, I have a really good chance, or I'm sitting in a box blind, I have a really good chance of seeing the deer that I want to kill. And I think for most properties that are like, and I'm talking more wooded country, like that's where I'm at, that are 40 acres and under, a single centralized food source and you hunting basically the perimeter of that based on wood and leaving everything else to be red, you'll probably kill more deer that way.
Yeah, especially on a small property.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's so funny. We probably all have like a perception about how deer will use, a food plot like that or just a property in general. And a lot of, I think, we'll be like, well, as long as they don't come from that way.
Yeah.
Right. And
they do.
Without fail, Dude, if you go in right now, if you go in and dive in and just go look at the trails are there. They'll prove to you that, like, as long as they don't sneak down behind me on this ditch and come up this way or this, or as long as they don't, circle downwind of me down here, if you go look, that's how they're coming in.
Yep.
They have enough cognitive ability to understand how they need to access spots like that without getting killed.
Yeah.
They're smart. And so the trick is just knowing that and beating them to it, getting down it. That's where you kill mature bucks, is when they think that they have it all figured out. They have the safe access, they have the wind in their favor, and they can't imagine a scenario where you would have figured that out and gotten downwind and they're done. They're done. Yeah. That's the situation that Brax explained there. They had no idea I was there. No idea.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I mean, I think if you reflect it, if you look at your cameras, I've got a spot on that Pennsylvania property. It's on the, it'd be the southeast corner of the property. And there's a house way up in the woods that has a road that they use multiple times a day. Every other day, a 6+-year-old buck would cross that road onto my property right past one of my cameras and tree stands every day. And he acknowledged that that road is purple. That there are going to be cars up and down that, including me on my 4-wheeler up and down that.
Yep.
But he's still going to cross it, and he's going to then dive into a red zone on my property, which I don't go into.
Yep.
And so if I took that up on a west wind and I got in there, he probably would smell me, but I bet he bypassed it because he's like, it's purple. And I'd kill him right at the junction.
They will do it. They will do it. I mean, dude, I think the road in front of our Illinois farm is clearly a blue area. It's a road.
Yeah.
They're crossing it.
They're crossing
in
it.
daylight.
There's 2 or 3 areas that are like purple. They're crossing for sure.
Yep. And they know, once every half hour, 45 minutes, a car will come down that road or whatever. And so they're aware of the time they sat there and watched the road probably all day.
I mean, we would assume multiple times, unless he was like literally at the road bedding, that Floppy was crossing that road in daylight multiple times in October and November.
Yep. I think he came right across it at like 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yep, just walked right across. Didn't even think into
covered it quickly.
I bet he trotted down a bean field though. That was fairly open.
Yeah, but once he gets across, there's cover. Yep. He can stay low. He can get out if he needs to.
But he did it multiple times and just didn't think.
Well, the highways right there crossing the stream right by the river are proof. It's like there's their own highways right there.
Yeah, they're coming through. Yeah, it's an interesting thinking, for a lot of us that are especially trying to either produce and or kill a mature buck. It's the tiptoeing that we're just constantly thinking about, and don't do this, don't do that, don't go in here, this is theirs. And it's like there are points of that are absolutely factual, but for a lot of it, it's probably areas that you're going to put red paint in no matter what. You just need to establish them as blue.
Well, in that sense, I don't think it is tiptoeing. I want people to think, because I felt like I was tiptoeing for a long time, and I feel less and less like I have to. Like, you can almost get to a point where you just, the more you understand the difference in those two areas, the red and the blue area, you can just move about in confidence. I've no problem. I'll drive those, and proof is, I used to tell my parents all the time, like in the middle of the summer, I'd be like, don't drive that road.
Yeah, we have that talk all the time.
And it's just like, as time goes on here, I'm like,
they know.
Who cares?
The deer know already.
It's a road. What's it matter? You're going to blow the deer off a field or what? It's fine. You don't want to do that during October and November. You potentially, messing up micro movements and stuff like that. But you use the farm, use the area, but don't go into those red zones, and you're good.
Yep. And so, switch gear a little bit. You just put in a water hole.
Yeah. Well, I just firmed it up.
Firming it up.
Yeah. Well, so it just is there, and I don't know. It's just like a natural indentation.
It's just a low area that had held some water.
Yeah, and
so it's got to be clay type soils.
It has something to do with there's a gas line it's a gas line, and there's some erosion happening. Whether it's like there's water underneath around that pipe washing it out or something. So it's like there's a depression there, is what it is.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be holding water, and I noticed that deer were using it. It's in the background of that scrape camera that's like a producer for me. So in my mind, I was just like, it's a great spot to have a water hole.
It's adjacent to bedding, right?
Yeah, to dry bedding and stuff. It's just another reason for him to be there. It's slightly at odds with what Sturgis would say is like you want it somewhere else for a different stand opportunity, but
because of the scrape already being like
it's
a
already
clutch
there.
stand.
Yeah, and so I don't have that going for me, but it is what it is. So
I mean, to me, it just seems like you're maximizing that spot.
yeah, I think so. So I went in and I just took bentonite, sodium bentonite. It's just like a clay that you can buy from the co-op or Lowe's or whatever. And I dumped 200 pounds in like not even a 10 foot by 10 foot section, which seemed like way too much, but I did some research and that's just what they recommend.
More is better.
More's better. Yeah, I don't think you have enough. And I just raked it in. It's really good with like a metal rake and tried to incorporate it with the soil. And so what it does is when it rains or gets wet, it expands
and seals it
and essentially creates like a pseudo seal there. So yeah, and they've been using it since. I think I sent you that picture yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I didn't know because it's just like a different color. It looks gray, or if they
I saw that.
freak them out or anything, and it didn't seem to. So
no. And it's got water holding in it now after these rains?
I haven't been back.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just 2 days ago I put that in.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really cool example of like acknowledging like that area where you're at there, where the scrape, the food plot, that water hole is fairly blue.
Dude.
Right? And it's just right on the edge of that bedding and stuff where you don't want to be into, but they want to come out of.
These water holes are huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Think about they got a drink.
Yeah.
So overlooked. Like we think about like, yeah, they get it from their green food sources and there's cricks everywhere and whatever. But to acknowledge that, especially in hill country, and in my case, hilly farm country, a lot of their bedding is dry in that it's not like they're bedding in a ditch where they can just like lean over and take a drink of stagnant water or whatever. They're bedding on ridges where they can watch over. And in a lot of cases, their movement off of those dry bedding ridges is lateral. You know, they're going to walk around it on the downwind side in a direction towards whatever, their scrape loop, or ultimately heading towards like their destination food source or and so if you can go in and provide them a water source, which is probably the number one thing on their mind, getting out of their bed nearby in a way that can be accessed, I think it's just absolutely deadly.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, Sturgis was a guy talking about it in
he's been doing that for
I've probably overlooked it for a long time, is like most of the properties I have creeks on them. Like, you know, all the lower, you know, ridges up above, low areas have a creek flowing through it. And, you know, he's fairly adamant that they would rather drink stagnant water for whatever reason.
They definitely would.
And it's weird because it's like, well, I've got cover, water, food on this place. You might, but if it's all flowing water, it may not be as effective as having a stagnant water area.
Well, not only that, but if you can position it in a way that they don't have to go out of their way.
Yeah, go down into...
It's literally a line. Like we could sit and draw a linear movement from roughly where I think they're starting, even if it's like, oh, hey, there's a 10-acre area that they could be coming from. And if a lot of it is dry, that's where you can optimize this. They're going to come. I know they're coming and they're hitting this scrape. I know they're going and hitting this other food plot. I know they're ending up roughly in this big destination food source. So if I can offer him a water source that's directly in line with that movement, he's likely to use it.
Yep. I just thought of an area to put one in at my house.
I know.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, I could put one here, but then it's like I can't hunt it. Per what we were just talking about, is I don't want to go deeper into my woods, but I've got one like right off of my food plot that tends to be a wetter area, so it doesn't grow shit anyways. If I would dig that out, it's a 20-yard shot from my box blind.
So here's an example. You've been, and I'm bringing this up because I think you've seen it with me. You know where the Jared Margie stands at.
Yep.
And you know kind of where I moved it to. I just moved it in 10 yards there. It's already foolproof. Like they're done. Especially when it's insulated with corn this year. We're killing a deer this year.
Yep.
Calling
right
it right now.
Yep.
There's 2 bucks in there that we would shoot. If I put a water hole right there, it would be even deadlier. I think.
Yeah, because I think they would come in. I think they would hit that, and then they would work the corn edge.
So here would be one consideration that I don't know the answer to. So if you, like what we were saying earlier, is like, I used to be my inclination to be like, well, let's put a food plot there. Put a food plot there. It'll make it better. But what it does is it pushes bedding back.
Well, and I think the other thing, as we learned from Chris, is depending on what size food plot you're doing, it often also congregates deer area you don't want deer to congregate.
Sure.
You don't want to have to access a food plot.
So I'm
with
just talking
deer
about a
in it.
small plot. Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah. In this case, I would be talking about a very small
kill plot.
1/8 acre plot.
Okay. Yeah, it does. It will push back those bedding from a depth of cover standpoint.
So I would say for sure in that situation, it's a negative. The stand that I'm talking about, just, for our listeners, I've got really clean access up a cornfield edge, essentially into bedding. We're purpling hard, and I've got 2 scrapes right there, and it's right on the edge of a really nasty bedding area that overlooks a green food source that I have adjacent to big ag. So it's like I'm right in there tight with them, and it's perfect. Yep. I would never put even a small plot there. Some guys might think like I'll put a small little staging plot there. I would never do that for the reason that I think that I'm within 50 to 100 yards of where they're bedding at.
Yeah,
really close.
Really close. Yeah.
And I think if I put that there, just the deer movement that's going to attract is going to push mature bucks back and further. It's going to make that spot worse from a daylight movement perspective. Where I'm going with that is I'm not familiar. I don't have enough experience with water holes to know if that would do the same thing.
I don't know.
Because in one breath, I just said I should put a water hole in there.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know because I don't either. My thinking or logic would be I believe they would use that much like a scrape, where it's there, they use it, and they move through quicker. That food opens area and changes landscape a lot different.
Yeah.
Even a small plot that's a 1/4 acre changes the landscape and how that edge is and, how deer are bedding and setting up. I think that would literally just be it'd be like a scrape, the way that they would hit that and use it. That'd be my thinking.
Yeah, boy, you got to be careful with. There are things that cameras are the other one.
Sure.
You think about just an area, you're like, it's a good area. Like just everything about it would work. Let's put a stand here. And a stand is that you got to have the stand, right? You have to, you want to hide it the best you can. But there's lots of other things that you can do to an area that in theory are going to improve it. I'm going to put a food plot there, put a water hole there. I'm going to put a mock scrape there. I want to put a camera on it so I can monitor it.
Yep.
I do think you can overdo it. Certainly with a food plot, I think, like you said, that's going to change the structure of that a little bit in a way that it's going to push bedding out and away from it more, especially from mature bucks. Scrapes, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to take advantage. I think they want a communication area nearby to where they're bedding. It's like it's in the right transition zone.
Well, I think that's just, community-wise, deer are just moving through. So that scrape is just another way of communicating and moving through and hitting it and moving on.
Yep. I don't think
they're not just going to, you see bucks bedding in it during a rut where they're just like waiting. But like most of the time, they're not going to just sit there and wait. They're going to hit it and move. Yep. I think the water hole's the same way.
Okay. So water holes and cameras are the ones that are like, to this day, dude, cameras, it's an interesting discussion because like they absolutely know that they're there.
Yep.
I think in almost every case, maybe if it's high enough in a tree or if it's been there the deer's entire life, certainly that's something they're more willing to tolerate. But almost always, like when you see deer interact with cameras, they know they're there.
They know they're there. Yep.
And so the question is, and Rendell's a fun one to talk to on this, as far as like, do you put a camera right next to a stand, or are we worried that that's going to, for sure the old cameras used to, right? Because guys, we get pictures of a deer and then like never again.
Never again. Yeah. I like to think, and maybe you're not getting the timing and the patternability that you want, but I like to think that if you can start to establish those cameras in more blue type areas, so on a food plot, on a road crossing, on a scrape, on a logging road, that those are going to be much less impactful as if, well, I'm going to go in here in May and I'm going to bury one in this bedding area and I'm not going to touch it because it's a cell cam, but you went in, you red painted it. There's now a foreign object in that bedding area for the rest of the year. I don't know if they get used to that.
You're talking about burying a camera,
burying a cell cam like in a bedding area versus if I put it on, almost taking a bracket approach, I put it on the food plot adjacent to the, I'm going to get that deer on camera, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I was almost thinking earlier, like as we were talking about the red and blue paint, like even though if you put red paint in an area, like in April, it's whatever. It's gone. It's not going to affect. It's not going to affect.
Different mindset in the animal at that point.
But if you go in and bury a blue bomb, do you know what I mean? Do they look at it that way?
I think they do. Even in April, I don't think that it bothers them, but they know it's there and they know they don't like that. I think it will eventually change the way that they're at. It's just like, I mean, whether it's a non-glow or whatever, those deer are looking at that camera. They know that freaking thing's
Isn't
there.
it interesting that, like, and I've done it a few times, but I think guys have had overwhelmingly poor success putting cameras of any type on clearly beds, like a buck bed.
Yeah, I never get the damn buck to come
They
back.
never come back.
Yeah.
Until like the camera's gone.
Yeah, never. I never get them on it. I'm like, man, I've done it multiple times in the last 2 years.
Me too.
I'm like, I'm going to get a giant coming into this thing. Never do.
And it's not like, oh, you picked the wrong spot. Clearly, like, I mean, you saw that bed in Illinois that we went and got in there. We could put for sure, there's a buck bedding there.
Yep.
100%. If we put a camera on there, I'm very pessimistic that we would, get much activity there at all.
The other one that is always weird is I've got like the same defined here in Pennsylvania, the same defined rub line every year, maybe different trees, but same line. And I'll frame a camera up every year to capture like basically a 20-yard area of that rub line. And it took over 2 years for me to get a mature buck to use that after I put the camera up in there. And it's like, every year I'm like, man, I'm missing something here. Like this whole area is tore up. And when I finally tried to monitor it, and see shit.
It's a good point. I mean, you could make probably a strong argument for keeping trail cameras out of your red paint areas.
And that's what I think. This is the danger of trail cameras. Cell cameras, regular cameras, doesn't matter. We want to get that deer in a area at a time that we can kill him. In our brain, that's how we function. Mm-hmm. The reality is that if we get that deer in a blue area at 2 a.m. consistently, he's there.
Yeah.
He's there and he's killable. We don't need to know that he's there at 5 p.m. coming out of the bedding area and hitting that scrape. You want to.
Your psyche, you want to see him and know that you could go in and kill him.
I think if you pull those cameras back towards your blue areas, which is food plots, scrapes on the edge of food plots, scrapes on a logging road, like any of those transition blue type areas, you may not get him during shooting hours. And frankly, you don't really want to. But you just want to be able to know that he's there so that when the conditions are right, you can get up close to that transition of blue and red and you kill him because he's there.
Yeah, that one is tricky because like you can certainly get away with, like I've got a camera on that scrape that I mentioned that I would say.
Yeah, but that's right on the edge, I think.
It is right on the edge.
And I think that's where you want your cameras. You don't want them far, like you're not going to put them in your yard at the house and hope that you get that buck on there. You want them right on those transition areas that it's basically acknowledged shared territory.
Yeah.
But think about that spot.
I love that.
What's the difference of putting that camera where you're at on that scrape and taking it 50 yards further into the woods towards their bedding on another scrape? You're going to get that deer on both scrapes. He's going to hit both of them. So why press in when you can get him on a more conservative spot?
Well, I think maybe where I'm trying to come away with an answer on this is like a lot of those purple areas or whatever, that's the stand location.
Yep. Right at it. Yep.
Can you negatively affect that relationship there
I don't think so.
With a camera?
I think that's the whole point of it being purple is that you both give ground.
Yeah.
I know he could be there, so I don't want to push in too hard.
Yeah.
But he knows I could be there, so
they
he's gonna
do know too. How funny is that?
Yeah. And I think if you
but they'll tolerate it. That tin shed gas line stand has been such a learning
that's a perfect example of where red and blue meet.
And it's like I'll be in there. I'll literally drive through there and they hear me. They're like, okay.
They know.
Going on, but it's remote enough and they're comfortable enough. The interactions I've had with them there have been positive enough that they're willing to go there in daylight hours.
Well, and I think that's where, Brian killed that buck right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
I've got constant daylight bucks.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. And so I think if you look at that, and even if you reflect on it, I mean, if I go back and start to think about even the deer I was chasing on public, like I would get really good bucks on public in Missouri, especially at 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 4 a.m. on scrapes in a lot of the old logging roads, right? So what do? I push those cameras in further to their bedding because I'm trying to say, oh, okay, I just want to make sure. Why did I need to do that? I didn't need to make sure anything. He was there. He's probably, if I am smart enough to acknowledge that this is a bedding area, he may not be in there all the time, but he's using it a lot. I'm getting him here. He's using that. I just needed to hunt it on the right time. Instead, I pressed in and put cameras in there, and I blew it.
So in that case, I would say it's tempting to suspect where they are and go in there and put a camera.
Yeah, you want to.
And you might get a picture of them, but it's going to have a negative
Absolutely.
It's going to have a negative consequence. Too many times we've done that and you never kill the deer. I think you're way better off to back out and have some theories about the direction of movement and try to get two of them to match up.
Yeah, based on wind and terrain. Yeah.
So look at it in a line. I think he's going here.
Yep.
Betting here, let's say. But I'm not going to go in there and put a camera. I think he's coming from or going to here and here, right? And if I can establish and determine in these two purple areas or blue areas or whatever with cameras that is in fact the direction he's going, that is the loop that he's making, now I have the pieces to go in there and be effective if that's where I'm going to hunt him.
Yep. No, I think it's absolutely, and even if right now I went through and said, okay, here's whatever, 20 cameras I still have active, I would assume half of them.
You still have 20 cameras active?
Yeah, probably. Some of them were for turkey and stuff. I would bet that half of those are in areas that I shouldn't be in.
Okay.
Because of just setting them up for, rut time frame and trying to pattern deer coming out of bedding and stuff like that. The other 20
that you shouldn't be in, or that the camera shouldn't be in?
The camera shouldn't be in.
Okay.
Yeah, I say you, I mean the camera. The other 10 are probably in conservative places that I'm going to get the deer on camera. I don't care if it's in daylight. I'm going to get the deer on camera, and then I can backtrack and say, okay, well, he was there an hour after dark. He's bedding close.
Yeah.
So that I think, but I know Illinois, we keep bringing it up, but I think it just becomes a really good example. If you look at how we had cameras, particularly for Floppy, we would get him coming across that road likely right after dark, hitting our bean field camera, and then we would catch him again coming up to the fence gap. And so we knew kind of the line of direction that deer had been working. In fact, he probably was staying to the west of our property when some of these other deer were more onto the east of the property.
Yeah.
All we needed to do was have two cameras in very blue areas, and we captured that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think what's interesting now that we're talking about it, I think that the honey hole is a red bomb we got in there. I know we're mixing our colors all up, but yeah, we got a bomb in there. And it's okay. I mean, I had previously viewed that as somewhat of a more purple area, where we could get in there. And I don't know, maybe time will tell.
We're close.
An example would be I wouldn't go.
We're even better where we were though, because I've backed that out about 50 yards from the center there towards blue zone.
Yep. In our red zones, they are pretty defined. So I wouldn't go up into our big block of timber and put a big giant scrape and a camera right in there.
Nope.
We wouldn't do it.
Wouldn't do it.
And as I'm thinking through my other cameras in Ohio, I think I'm pretty good with that now. I don't bury cameras in the deer areas. I have them where I have stands, and that's kind of what I was questioning there a little bit earlier, is if there can be any kind of a negative relationship with that, even while we're not there, and it's not what I want. But
I think listeners on this one, if you're hunting more timber-based properties, you've got more of a tendency to be putting cameras in red space. Just because of the way that the structure sets up and stuff. I mean, if we're talking big cover and things like that, and I'm dropping down, I think he's bedded here. Just the moment I drop down in there, I might be in red already. And I up until this year, that's why I say I have cameras out that are probably in it. Now I've got 4 main new food plots on the fringe of a giant red area. And so all my cameras are going to be up on that ridge off of that red area. And I may not get him until midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever. He's there. He's in one of the red areas surrounding that blue area. It's just, historically, I wanted to know more defined maybe where he's coming from. or know if I should, and that's
it's
just
insecurity is what it is. And we all have it. We all come from a place as you're gaining experience. You want to, like, what's more affirming than a daylight picture of a big buck in front of your tree stand?
It's the epitome of getting him on camera a day before you were going to hunt him.
I have not killed those deer so many times.
Yeah.
Dude, Goose was the most daylight active on camera buck I've ever had. And I just never could kill him. Like, and partly to do with some of what we're talking about here. I mean, that was potentially like a crossover area. I think the wind was more that bit me than anything, but
yeah, it's a combination though, because I think if I think back to how I've killed deer and like where camera sets up. So like that deer over your shoulder, I had a camera on a scrape on a field edge, blue, right? I think you wandered into that one a little bit, but I didn't know he was there. I was trying to kill a different deer.
Well, but also the spot. Like I thought it was, in hindsight, like perfect execution.
It was just a pure hanging hump.
You had the camera in the right spot. It was on the clover plot. It was definitely like a safe area for them, but they knew you were in there.
Yep.
And
I was most
guys would have gone in and hunted right there. Hunted that corner.
100%.
My North Dakota buck is a similar situation. Even though I didn't have pictures of him, we had the footprint, and I knew that was a purple area.
But you pushed in.
And so in both of those cases, we pushed in knowing how they're going to operate there. An aggressive stance, because both those cases were, limited time.
Yep.
I was on the very last day.
It was the first sit of the year for me. I just waited. I sat on the sidelines till weather conditions were right.
And in both cases, killed those bucks out of that. Well, they're not going to come, most guys would not have gone into that spot, I think.
And if we blew those hunts, I would say very likely we would have not had another opportunity at those deer.
Probably not.
So that's where, again, you take these pieces of like what Chris and Sturgis and everybody are talking about, and it's like, man, when you combine them, you've got to adapt it a bit to your situation. How long do you have to hunt? What's the property like? Time of the year, weather conditions, all of those things still come in. But, if you think about those areas, case in point again, like that buck a few years ago, I killed on public in Kansas, that 157-inch 10. We had a stand hung in there. We had not been in there. We didn't have camera in there, like with nothing. I went in there, got in clean. That deer came right underneath me. I killed him first morning. I was the blue bomb in the middle of the red at that point in time.
Right.
Had I not killed that deer, that bottom would have just continued to probably get worse over the week that we hunted it. But also normally we're running a camera on a big scrape not too far away. And that was the year it got stolen. So we didn't have a camera down there. We didn't know.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but we're right and you're wrong. And you just need to accept it. We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line.
We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration. And we shoot broadheads that are going to give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but like we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us.
Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts.
Right on.
So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever Broadheads as well.
Well, and that's where, public land is a totally different situation. I mean, it's totally different because there's freaking red paint everywhere. You know what I mean? I don't want to confuse people with red areas, blue areas. The whole premise there was when you go into a deer area, you're dripping red paint. When you're in a human area like across, you're dripping blue paint. You want to have as little red paint as all it is. On public land, I think it is way more about, I mean, especially with whitetails, and a lot of that is in timber country. Some of it's a mix and stuff like that. It's more about patterning, the guys. And
which is where it makes it really difficult, because there's a very small blue paint okay areas on public land for those deer. So most of it is like deer are going to tolerate you coming into a parking area, right? They're going to tolerate you probably walking in the trails.
So let's stop calling them blue and red areas, because that's going to confuse me. I think while you're in the parking area, you're dripping blue paint.
You're dripping blue.
Yeah.
While you're walking down the main access road,
you're dripping blue paint.
Dripping blue. The moment you then say, okay, I'm going to dive off to this ridge that's got bedding off of it, now I'm red.
You start to drip some red paint.
Yep. And so I think if you're trying to then pattern all the other hunters, right? You guys are all dripping blue coming down the main access road. Now all of a sudden you start to see red paint being dripped off the sides of that as these guys start to penetrate into the woods further.
Well, and that's why you see bucks now nearby the parking area, because they'll tolerate the blue paint.
Exactly. And nobody is pushing too far off of that blue paint area to where they're usually staged up on.
Well, they are out into it. They're going deep,
not just parallel.
So when you envision that, branching effect, guys are going deep on public land in a lot of cases here.
It's the fad right now.
Yeah, and
right?
Historically you've had to do that because those areas were safe for deer. Nobody was penetrating them.
There was no red paint when you became the red paint, basically.
Yeah. And now those areas do get penetrated more frequently, and so the deer just adapt. They move up to areas where there is no paint, which I think there's less of now than there used to be, or there's just blue paint, which they'll tolerate.
And I think that's what you have to look at, is you see that kind of everybody's dripping blue, and then if you can imagine it, it's almost like a water fountain of red that starts to spray out on both sides.
A river of blood.
Yeah, as these guys start to do that. So look at your aerial like that and say, okay, here's where all this red paint starts to drip. Either find a favorable blue paint area that like deer could be there. Just a lot of times that's going to be at night, or.
Go ahead, sorry.
Or find the areas that aren't being touched with red that you could be the first one. Maybe you are going to drip red like we just talked about, but you're going in to make a kill on that day, period.
I think guys, myself included, overlook blue paint areas.
100%.
How many, if you, spots do you think that you neglect because you drive through them? You're like, well, I drive through here.
Oh, all of them. I don't even pay attention to them.
You might look at it in hindsight and be like, well, from a geographical standpoint, and like technically it is in like a right area, it's approachable, I could hunt this, but I drive through here.
I drive through here. I park right here. I drive through. There's noise from the house and stuff.
Okay, so here's a good example. The best case of that I can think of, it's a mega blue area. It's like a culvert we drive through all the time on the way back to this big grain field and stuff. We found Goose's sheds, that deer that I mentioned earlier. They were my rattling horns now. He was 155, like as a 4-year-old. He got killed he was 170 clean 10 point by a neighbor way far away. Found those sheds right there, right on the gas line that we drive through all the time.
Yeah. In
the middle of the blue paint.
Yep.
Hey now.
What the hell was that?
You little drop it low, girl.
Yeah, it's just like.
Wow.
That's how I get into those blue paint areas. I just
sink right into
them. Well,
case in point, though. I mean,
I think that's a good one. It was funny. It was this year, actually. So I was driving up to the mountain in Ohio Powell, and I go up this back road. There's this little cabin and stuff. There's this pine tree. It's a 2-lane highway. It's this pine tree right off this highway that's like substantial, that's just rubbed to shit. And it's like, why would a giant buck sit there and just rub this pine tree? Like, literally, there's a 2-lane highway that's pretty freaking busy here. There's cabins all over the place, and it's blue paint area. He doesn't care. Yeah. Like, he's not establishing himself there. He's not going to bed right there, but he'll use it because it's blue paint area. He doesn't care.
Boy, it really will give you a whole new perspective on like your property if you break it down in that way, and just think about, I'm dripping red paint in that area, dripping blue, everybody's dripping blue paint in this area. And to know that even mature bucks are willing to cross over into blue paint areas. But that's the
I think that's
the trick.
The biggest thing that you have to think about and just try to make it clear for everybody is just like they're all purple. Their brain's purple at this point. Listening to this.
I mean, I'm a little purple, honestly.
Is that
firmed up and purple?
Is that you? And it's the easiest way to. You don't want red paint anywhere on the property you're hunting.
Minimal.
If you're hunting public though, there's going to be red paint. You need to minimally drop red paint, and if you do, it's because you're going in to make a kill. If you're a private guy, like we're talking about a lot on our stuff and managing properties, minimal red paint. If you're doing it, it's because you're being aggressive to go in and make a kill.
Minimal red paint.
Yep. Yeah. Minimal red paint.
Well, and so on the paint theme here, sticking with it, you can establish areas of blue paint, that previously may have been red paint. They were just untouched.
Yep.
And it's okay. You can, just by having activity to go in and
old logging roads.
Plant
great example.
Well, no, not just even hunting, but managing, like to go in and plant a food plot. So like I went in and put a food plot in knowing that I was establishing what may have previously been a red area as a blue area.
Yep. And the deer movement's going to change. The bedding's going to change. Everything's going to change because of that. It's not going to be the same.
But I got to have blue areas.
There you go. You have to have blue areas. That's the key. And yeah, I think
just like your logging roads that you put in there.
Absolutely. Those were all red.
Previously red. You established blue areas. And maybe it's going to push deer back into certain areas, but you got to have it to hunt that.
That's my access. That's how I'm going to do it. And I want them to know I'm going to access that way so they don't freak out when I come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's that complicated to think about it that way. The challenge is there's very few of us, you and I included, people listening to this, that can not drip red paint, particularly during the season. Like there are just times that like if because of schedules and things, like if I'm going to go kill that deer, I'm going to have to go outside of the blue areas to do it. I think that's perfectly fine. It just has to be super calculated.
Well, yeah, and it's fine. You can kill 3 and 4 year old bucks dripping red paint.
I think you can kill mature bucks. We've done it.
You can, but you can't grow them consistently. If you're constantly dripping red paint in...
I agree.
Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that those super mature bucks, if they're fortunate enough to survive to 4 years old, at that point, they have reached a level where they're not going to tolerate any red paint. They're not going to live there consistently anyways.
You better kill them when you drip it.
You better kill them when you drip it, or they're going to live in exclusively areas with no paint at all, or with predominantly blue paint. They're going to live, even if it's lesser habitat. I mean, dude, that 160-inch buck, dude, you got to see this thing too. Like the mount that Travis did and stuff. It's a huge deer.
Your dad's?
My dad's that he killed 2 years. It's a monster.
And that deer was living basically in a blue area, right?
What I would call a blue area with extremely subpar habitat. Subpar. Yeah. Subpar habitat. It was just like a little like pine, not even like a low-lying pine, like a big white pine, like empty bottom by a railroad track. But there was blue paint, a coat on either side. You got a railroad track with constant, you got a road.
Ag field.
And then you had a section that had no paint. Just a small little block,
and
because nobody would ever expect that there's anything in there.
And that's where he
was living.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to try to realize is like how you can do that. And
we need a Spartan Forge layer with blue and red paint.
Yeah, as soon as you step off, start dropping red and
got me, Bill?
back on blue. Yeah, Bill got it. Yeah, it's interesting to think that. I do think that if you go in and hunt and you drop red paint, you still have a good chance of killing him. But if you don't on that hunt, every hunt in that area you should expect to be less likely.
And so here's the safest strategy. Just don't drop any red paint. You can all the bucks can get killed on blue paint.
And that's Chris Brackett's theory.
Yep. With enough time.
I would say that's probably most of Mark Drury's theory and most of Lee Lakosky's theory as well. Is with enough time,
because those guys' objective is to grow old bucks.
Yep.
And that's, I think, a further evolution than just to kill a 4 or 5 year old buck.
Agree.
You can do it. You can drip red paint. You can do it, but you're not going to grow old bucks consistently dripping red paint.
Yep.
Whew. I like that.
Call us Pablo fucking Picasso after that, huh?
Picasso, yeah. It's pretty obscure, pretty abstract, but
it's a little abstract,
It's fun to gain that knowledge. I mean, dude, we learned a lot walking that property with Chris and just understanding his mindset of stuff. And
well, I hope it just, if anything, it gives you, when you walk your own property, just think about it differently. Think about, okay, I'm walking down this logging road. I'm on this logging road a lot. This is a blue paint area. I'm dropping blue paint. It's good. I can do this. I can do it every day if I wanted to. The moment I deviate and I drop down into this bottom, or if I go up on this ridge and stuff, you're dripping red. Don't do that. And if you do it, you better make sure it's super calculated and you're going to kill them when you do it.
Well, and this is where like the hunting instinct is, like, even during the off season, it's fun to just perceive everything that's happening. Like, dude, the little things, like certainly which way is your wind blowing. Like, you could be in a blue area blowing your wind into where deer are at.
Absolutely.
And that's not great. Little things like shutting your vehicle off. It's like, you're blue until you kill it.
Yep.
And now you could be, you could be setting an alarm off.
Yeah.
Just little things like that, you got to pay attention.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's really good. Well, I mean, we talk about the vehicle thing. We'll wrap up with this, but the vehicle thing, I know you've used it. Winky uses it all the time, right? The truck coming in to get you, right? That truck essentially
100%.
is blue paint coming in to get you. But if you got down on the stand and you walked out through that field in the dark, red.
Especially if they see you getting in or out of it. Yeah, not good.
So it's like, man, that's a tough thing, because like if I'm driving my logging roads all the time and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to just walk in this logging road. It's like, is that still blue?
No, it's different.
Tough to think about that stuff in your head and be able to understand what that translates to.
The best case scenario is that you use your vehicles in the vehicle areas, basically.
Yeah.
And they know where they are. They consider them, that's a blue paint area essentially. But if you can access stands from a completely different exterior, that I think is where you can, because they never saw it coming.
You're completely off guard at that point.
They know, they say, if people are coming up here, they're coming from the blue area here.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden,
and I didn't hear anything.
You're already there when they come through. And that's what bracket means by they didn't know I was there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, man. Well, I mean, hopefully we did not confuse the shit out of you and your colors. If you've got crayons in your hand, just start coloring.
Roy G. Bev.
Yeah, you'll be fine. But no, I think
Roy G. Bev.
Yeah, there you go. I think overall, if you just kind of think about your property and how you use it, and again, you're never going to be able to, well, I'm just going to get in and out. It's just not going to happen. You have to establish areas that you're going to be on, and that's your blue paint. And anything off of that is not established is red, whether it's bedding or just open areas or whatever. If you're not in there all the time, it's going to be, that's a red area. You're dropping red paint.
Well, I hope we don't give the perception of having it all figured out either.
We have no freaking
Because I
idea.
went up Monday and seriously toiled over how to structure that grain plot. I really, even now, I'm not completely satisfied with it. It's,
Speaking of blue paint, I have your blue dye in my truck.
Ooh, thank you for remembering that.
Huh?
I'll put some
Staying
of that
on
down.
theme.
That's one of those areas that is just like, man, how do you take an area and maximize movement through certain areas and also give the diversity and everything that you want? And so I think it's a work in progress.
Yep. Cool. Well,
let's last thing I want to just say this too. So we're gonna go to attack.
We are.
Right. So
Good Challenge.
we're gonna be there with Bo Martonic on Saturday, the 1st, I think, of June.
1 p.m. we're shooting.
At 1-ish. So I don't know if we go an hour early or something.
We'll be there early.
Try
probably.
to just hang out and stuff. So if anybody's gonna be there, please,
Seven Springs.
please grab us. Don't let us just like walk past and not say hi.
Seven Springs Tack here in Pennsylvania, June 1st. Hopefully weather's good.
I guess while we're on that vein too, so that's the 1st of June. We'll be there with Bo. Rendell will be there too in his booth. I'm sure a bunch of other guys will run into.
Yep.
That'll be fun. We're also doing the Mobile Hunter Roadshow.
Yeah, it's in August.
With Cody and Andre.
At their farm.
When is it?
Iowa
August
is
23rd?
August 23rd, I believe.
And I think there's still tickets for that if anybody's in. I mean, that's at the Quisto farm. Dude, speaking of that, and Cody's going to be here in a few weeks, frickin' guys are continuing to break the mold.
Did you see that? And freaking no cable.
No cables on this new stand they come out with.
Slick of them, though. I mean, if you are a saddle hunter, that's your platform. If you're not a saddle hunter, it works great.
Oh, well, dude, I will say that is the best run and gun stand, period. Even the 0.5 and the 0.75 and the 1, that's what we were using previously. If I was going to gripe about anything, and it would be a gripe with any stand, but certainly the smaller the platform, the more you feel it, is that the cables are there. And if you're using like, boots, get rubber boots, lacrosse boots, or, whatever, there's a bit of squeaking on the sides.
Oh, I know.
And so you got to keep a really level
And that's tough on the 0.5 as much as I love them. It's tough on that.
And so those guys, I don't know how they did it yet. He's going to bring us.
I saw the like junction point.
He's going to bring us some of those stands, but that is a cableless stand. Beat that, basically.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll be running this year.
Pretty stoked. So if anybody's listening to this, if you don't already have your TAC ticket, I think you're in deep shit though.
Yeah, they're sold out.
Mm-hmm. So, but if you see us at TAC,
we had to pull some tricks to get ours because we're late to the game. So.
Yeah, grab us on that, and should be good. But cool.
Well, we miss anything, Nick? Are we good?
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Cool. Well, we appreciate everybody listening to this episode, number 182, and we'll see y'all next week.
Later.
Take me